The Analects of Confucius guides people toward living a moral and responsible life. One saying reminds us that wrongdoing has consequences and cannot be erased by rituals or prayers. Good day, everyone. The saying that we have chosen from the Analects is: the saying has got it wrong when you have offended against heaven. There is no way you can turn to in your prayers. This warns that actions have consequences, and good intentions must be reflected in our behavior.
Now, let's focus on the first part of the maxim, which is the saying has got it wrong. Here, Confucius begins by correcting a popular misunderstanding, making it clear that relying only on prayer after wrongdoing is mistaken and that moral responsibility cannot be ignored. This reminds us that understanding the true meaning of a saying is just as important as following it.
As a continuation to the maxim, the line, when you have offended against heaven, this means when a person acts wrongly or violates the moral order, their actions go against what is just and right. Heaven represents the highest moral authority, and offending it is a serious matter.
So the last part in the saying, and as the continuation of the maxim, the line, there's nowhere you can turn to in your prayers. So prayers cannot erase the results of immoral actions. So no matter how many rituals or words of repentance you perform, after the fact, the consequences of the wrongdoing remain.
The overall meaning of the saying is that Confucius is teaching that moral behavior must come first before rituals or prayers. So, integrity and sincerity in one's actions are more important than outward ceremonies. So, if one person or if a person acts wrongly, no external behavior can replace a true moral responsibility.
And for the intended audience, this teaching is directed toward leaders, scholars, and all the people who rely too much on prayers, ceremonies, or rituals while neglecting proper behavior or proper conduct. Confucius warns against using prayers or rituals to cover up their wrongdoing.
And now for the appeal. So the saying appeals to both moral reason and responsibility. Confucius reminds us that heaven, as the highest moral authority, cannot be easily deceived. He teaches us that true righteousness comes from acting rightly, not just from performing rituals or simply asking for forgiveness.
Confucius' sayings reminds us that consequences cannot be avoided, and in the same way, we cannot undo the damage caused by floods if we did not prepare earlier. I was reminded of this when I saw what happened in Cebu and Calaon during the recent typhoon, which is the Bagyong Tino. Many houses were destroyed, family lost their things, and people struggled because water rose so fast. It showed me how important it is to prepare before disaster happen. If we act earlier, I believe we can save more lives, protect more homes. And so this experience taught me to never ignore warnings and to always be ready.
Confucius correcting a misunderstanding is like telling us to rely on excuses or promises. What really matters is taking action to improve drainage and flood control before disasters come.
As for me, when Confucius talks about offending heaven, it is similar to how corruption, poor planning, or even illegal dumping harm our environment and end up putting families' lives at risk. As to what happened here in our country, in our province, and in places like Canlaon, due to offending heaven brought about by the typhoons Tino and Uwan, people have suffered a lot.
Just as prayers can't undo bad actions, Even the victims in Canlaon and other areas affected are given relief goods and rescue efforts, but it cannot fully replace the proper flood control or prevention that should have been done long before the storm, and lives could have been saved. In the context of the recent typhoons that happened here in Negros Oriental, especially in Canlaon, where many families are still struggling to recover, this teaching can relate to that. Leaders should focus more on proactive measure rather than just solely relying on prayers and relief efforts after the effect.
I believe that this appeals to our sense of moral responsibility. And in relation to the recent events, it tells us that doing what's right means building on systems that can save lives rather than just saying sorry when damage has already been done. And I feel deeply for my hometown, Canlaon City, with all the damages and their lives lost. So, and with that, I think that this tragedy shows us the truth of the lesson that it's not enough when we only pray when the disaster is already happening, or we only take action after the disaster has already happened. But rather, true responsibility means taking action, preparing, and protecting our community ahead of time. And doing what's right can save lives and lessen the suffering until it's too late.
And with that, I believe that Confucius is basically reminding us that actions matter more than appearances. And in our case, real environmental responsibility matters more than speeches about it.